lets us. What rules? He said, "Oh, I'll be here." Well, she asked us, she's like, please don't, like, grandma, grandpa, and don't let them come. I said, I'll get them the link to the live feed. And then she's kind of stressing about us, and I was like, well, if you go in there and you say you need us to leave, we will go to my office and watch live feed, so that's fine. Just stay in there for now. I'm really excited, obviously, for her. Yeah, my office. They don't have any more cupcakes. Make sure they log in. Those figures are pretty. Is this one too?
Is this something
Or is this ours?
That's for you.
Okay, so you should, the session numbers.
Well, and to know, the numbers beside the judges don't matter. This is the session ID they have to know, but these are your judges, except you don't have office. So that admin is blocked. If you ever have less than 4 judges with 5 minutes before the presentation, call my cell phone so I can find somebody.
When I announce them, do I need to announce the session ID or is it the room number? When I announce
Very
them,
soon.
or they
Yeah.
should have that, right?
They should have it, but you will probably need to announce.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes. Her presentation is so good. Yay! Have you seen it?
Oh,
I've seen nothing.
I'm sure.
Do you guys want to go get your bear ambassador photos from Mr. Knapp? He has them in his room if you want to wear them.
say.
You're in there.
Yeah, yeah.
Sophia, just a reminder, the mic stays hot.
Yeah.
So don't be talking about it out here.
This Dylan.
You never know. Serious business. Only Dylan.
You're trying to be invisible.
Gosh. When we get closer to time, I'll get you your clicker and your microphone, so.
Top five. I know tomorrow they perform in front of the junior class. They do it anywhere else?
The top five go to the next school board, like the one in May, and only the top one.
Gotcha.
I was there for that one last year.
I was gonna say, he did the whip. Yeah.
The junior class did not see that.
Oh, that would have been horrible. Horrible, but awesome at the same time. That's okay.
Hey, found you. The luck of the draw. I got this one. I didn't know who I was signing up for.
You're probably tired of hearing this talk by now.
Yeah, I'm becoming more familiar with that voice all the time.
I'm gonna try and talk slower today than I normally do. So we'll see if I'm successful.
Oh, you put it on. Look at you. That's awesome. Well, he was over here trying to memorize the equations.
Cube roots.
Cube roots.
Well, okay, I better turn mine off. Okay. I thought, got to this point, I had to put my username and all that in. I guess I turned it.
Yeah, I may have you just move to another. We'll figure this one out later.
Yeah. So, to get into it, well,
It should bring you right up to the, where you put your password in. Is it okay to go on my caller? Okay. Okay, cool. Okay. Oh. The clicker's not working, yeah. It says it's on. Oh. Yeah, the click. Mm-mm.
Perfect, thank you. Are my judges ready? Friedrich Nietzsche once said, "Without music, life would be a mistake." Now, Nietzsche also believed strongly in a concept called nihilism, the basis of which revolves around the belief that life is pointless. So our question then becomes, if he believed that life and value systems are completely meaningless, how could he also say that life would be a mistake without music? Well, Nietzsche recognized a practically universal truth: the significance of music. Hello, I'm Madeline Poore, and I believe that music can act as a universal language, and that despite many misconceptions, it plays an integral role in increasing and maximizing brain health and function, academic performance, social well-being, and mental health. Now, I've always loved music, but growing up, it acted more as background noise than anything else. This all changed, however, in 6th grade, when we were tasked to choose between the electives of band, art, and choir. For the sole purpose of avoiding the other two, I selected band. Through my experiences in this class, I quickly uncovered an extensive passion for music, and since then, my love of music has only continued to grow. Because of this, when it came time to select a senior research topic, I knew I wanted to choose something that would allow me to dive deeper into this passion and further explore some of the benefits that music had to offer. The first thing I wanted to understand, though, was how exactly music functions in our minds. Interestingly enough, I found that we don't have an exact answer to this question. Sound is composed of the basic elements of loudness, pitch, duration, tempo, contour, timbre, spatial location, and reverberation. These elements are then organized into the more complex elements of meter, key, harmony, and melody to form music. Now, despite having this definition for music, we still don't understand how our brains classify certain sounds as musical versus non-musical. Researchers have yet to determine what causes certain notes, chords, or progressions to sound pleasant to our ears, and they also have yet to determine what causes music to affect our emotions. Despite this, researchers as a whole recognize that music has significant impacts on people. Some of the most substantial of these impacts can begin as early as early childhood and development. According to one study, music increases the involvement of toddlers in school. This increased involvement then creates an environment of more sustained and intense activity that both facilitates learning and improves creativity. Music also has some social benefits for these toddlers. It promotes the development of skills such as emotional comprehension, pro-social skills, and attentional regulation. Toddlers in highly musical environments have been shown to be consistently happier and more content, as well as more stable and adaptive in social interactions. All of these skills combine to form the increased likelihood of more productive and successful outcomes later in life, as well as building the foundations for dealing with adversity. These learning and social developments are excellent at preparing these toddlers for further schooling, and the continuation of music in school has the potential to create even more significant impacts. According to a study published in the Journal for Educational Psychology, students in music score higher in academic core subjects. Students with high involvement and high achievement in music score higher in all academic core subjects than their non-musical peers. This association is more pronounced in instrumentalists than it is in vocalists, and those involved in instrumental music have been shown to be the equivalent of 1 academic year ahead of their non-musical peers on average. A separate study also found that music has positive impacts on the areas of foreign language and literacy as well. Now, music education is excellent at increasing quality of school life, specifically in the areas of general satisfaction with school, sense of opportunity and achievement, and classroom climate. This music education is also great for promoting cooperation, both in the classroom and among students. Now, the continuation of music beyond the classroom has the potential to create even more significant impacts. One major area that music has the ability to impact is health. Music can affect our physiological processes and improve both our mental and physical well-being. It helps to improve heart rate and motor skills, stimulate the brain, and enhance the immune system. Music is also great for promoting mental longevity. Learning skills that involve coordination, such as learning an instrument, are excellent at warding off age-related cognitive decline and dementia. Music has also been shown to improve both concentration and memory in seniors. Now, the learning process for music involves several skills that heavily stimulate the brain. These skills include understanding the abstract language of notes and musical theory, translating this knowledge into physical action, learning to do these two tasks simultaneously, and then learning to do all of this while simultaneously playing with and adjusting to a musical ensemble. All of these skills combine to create some really healthy and vigorous brain stimulation in all ages. I have personally seen many of these benefits in my own life, and when it came time to select a product for my senior project, I knew I wanted to choose something that would allow me to dive deeper into the benefits that I had discovered, while simultaneously promoting them to those around me. Because of this, for my project, I decided to learn several new instruments and use them to record several instrumental songs. The first step in this process was song selection. Going into song selection, I knew I wanted to choose more modern songs in an effort to emphasize just how approachable instrumental music can be. Instrumental music doesn't have to be some lengthy, intimidating piece that puts you to sleep. It can be accessible to a wide variety of people. After selecting my songs, I immediately jumped into learning all of this new music, including the instruments I had yet to play. For nearly 8 years now, I've been playing alto saxophone, and outside of briefly learning a little bit of piano, it was the only instrument I knew how to play. For this project, I decided to relearn piano, as well as learn flute, tenor saxophone, and bari saxophone for the very first time. Initially, I jumped into learning or playing all of these new instruments and all of this new music. But as the recording process approached, I narrowed it down to one song and one instrument at a time. In late October, I recorded my first piece, a flute and piano duet. Now, the recording process ended up being a bit more tedious than I initially anticipated. Because I was recording each part separately, it was absolutely essential that I ensure everything was recorded at the exact same tempo. While this might sound simple in theory, in practice, it became a bit more difficult initially I accomplished this by simply having a metronome playing in my ear. While this worked well enough at first, it became a bit difficult to ensure that rhythms were lining up the exact way I needed them to. I began recording my second song using the same method, but I quickly found a much more reliable and efficient way of doing things. Rather than having a metronome playing in my ear as I was recording, I switched over to a recording of the song I was currently playing and recording. This allowed me to ensure that rhythms were lining up the exact way I needed them to as I was recording, rather than having to wait until the editing process to see if parts were going to work together. As soon as I finished recording a song, I would immediately jump into the editing process. Oftentimes, I'd be in the process of editing one song while in the process of beginning to record my next song. Editing was oftentimes a breeze and sometimes a bit of a self-imposed nightmare. Being the perfectionist that I am, I had a tendency to re-record the same part over and over and over again until I got the exact take I was looking for. Because of this, I had a lot of audio to go through when it came time to edit. My shortest clips were around a minute to a minute and a half, but my longest were well over 30 minutes. I had to go back through each and every one of these, and oftentimes I'd only be pulling a measure or two from each of them. This ended up working out in my favor, though, because it allowed me to be extremely precise in the editing process, which gave me a really nice, clean, finished product at the end, especially with my last two songs. In early February, I finished recording my final song, and about a week later, I wrapped up editing. My final product was 3 instrumental songs, 1 flute and piano duet, 1 saxophone and piano duet, and 1 saxophone trio. I also managed to save several different iterations of each of these songs, including a few piano-only versions. overall, I was super happy with how the recordings turned out, and I felt like I really got to use this experience as an opportunity to build my skills as a musician. Now, despite this, I of course faced some challenges along the way. One of my biggest challenges going into this project was the technology I knew that it would involve. Anyone who knows me can attest to the fact that me and technology do not mix well together. Because of this, it was super important to me to find a recording process that was both simple and yielded high quality results. Initially, I began recording directly in my editing software. But unfortunately, because of some automatic settings that I couldn't figure out how to properly alter, my recordings turned out extremely warped and airy sounding. Because of this, I ended up switching over to the Voice Memos app, which is the built-in recording app on iPhones. While this is a much less high-tech and high-quality recording software, it actually ended up working out pretty well for what I was attempting to do. I also had to learn a new editing software, GarageBand. Thankfully, this was a much simpler task. Because I have a little bit of experience with some video editing softwares, learning an audio editing software was a much smaller learning curve. My second biggest challenge with this project was the piano I was using to record both of my piano duets. For both of these songs, I decided to record using my church's piano, and during the saxophone and piano duet in particular, it was extremely out of tune. It hadn't been tuned in quite some time, and because I was recording in December, it was extremely cold in the church, which only worsened the tuning issues I was already having. Unfortunately, it was so out of tune that there was no way for me to tune my saxophone to that point. And because of this, when I put these saxophone and piano parts together, the recording sounded super clashy and out of tune. This was one of the reasons I decided to start saving several different iterations of each song. For this song, I saved a saxophone-only and a piano-only version. Saving these different iterations of each song allowed me to still have a nice, clean, finished product of this song, even though it wasn't what I was initially anticipating. By learning all of these new instruments and musical techniques, I was able to dive deeper into the benefits of music and further understand myself as a musician. I came out of this project with a product I could be proud of and a newly rediscovered love of learning and expanding my musical skills. I truly hope that this project has helped display both the benefits and the approachability of music, and that it has shown people that without music, life truly would be a mistake. Thank you. Do my judges have any questions?
What would you
Um, I would probably choose only one song that was a piano duet. Just because me and piano, the first time I tried to learn piano was in 2nd grade, and that lasted about 2 weeks, and then it was done. And then I learned it again 8th grade year for marching band, but it was a very simple part. It was a bass piano part, so it was a lot of whole notes, a lot of just sitting there playing the same chord over and over again, which was fine with me, because I was not great at piano. And relearning this definitely made me realize that piano's probably not for me. It was still a fun experience, and I wish I could play piano. I really respect people who can play it well, but I would definitely do only one piano duet.
So which of the instruments do you prefer?
The alto saxophone still has a very special place in my heart. But I actually ended up really loving tenor and bari saxophone. So, that's really close to what I already play. But the tenor saxophone in particular has like such a different sound. And it was a really smooth tone too that I don't know, I really liked it. I kind of, after recording with the tenor saxophone, I went to my mom and was like, we could always get another saxophone.
2 questions, Maddie. Number one,
Yes.
How did you come up with the song? I know that you wanted to choose one
Yes.
songs, but why those 3?
So I ended up choosing a flute and piano duet that was a cover of Castle by Halsey. The saxophone and piano duet was a cover of Cardigan by Taylor Swift. And then the saxophone trio was a cover of Smells Like Teen Spirit by Nirvana. So I got them from a free music app, so people can compose their own music and own musical covers and upload them there. And so I was able to get all of my sheet music for free, which was amazing because sheet music can be extremely expensive. And those were kind of like some of the highest quality recordings on there. And they were also songs that I know and like really enjoy just the original recordings of. So I kind of took something that I knew I would love and something that I knew would like be high quality.
Kind of leads me to the next question because I really want to hear the saxophone version.
Okay, I was gonna say,
Where can I hear this?
it's they're in the judges' packets, but they're not labeled as which one is which. I will warn you, the flute and piano duet was the first one I did, so the editing on that is extremely rough, and I kind of wanted to leave it that way, as like, you know, this is what I started out at, and then my second song is such a huge step up from that. So I could kind of like, you know, compare the progress I made in the amount of time that I did. But yeah, they're all on there, but they're just not labeled. So is that it? Cool. Thank you. Oh gosh. Okay, I can't see it. There we go. I was trying to press the wrong thing.
And it's not just me.
Yeah, no, I'm very, I'll go.
It's goosebump worthy. Sorry.
You can hear the keys in the background. There's no way to but it's my favorite out of all of them. Technical difficulties. I need help getting to the other slide presentation because it has the live stream up. Go ahead and put that on,
Just one up here.
just wherever. Yeah. Put it like right there, that's probably good. And there's your clicker.
Are my judges ready? Okay. Small businesses affect our communities in many ways, and I think it's an important thing for us to stop and look around at the business around us and realize how they affect us. Hi, my name is Simon Bolander, and my project is Groundwork for a Future. Small businesses help our communities a lot. A main reason for that is they provide jobs. A lot of the jobs, especially in a community like ours, are from small businesses, especially here in Willow Springs because we have a lot of restaurants and small businesses along the Strip and Main Street. They also receive federal grants, which help a lot with creating more jobs. A study showed that for every $10,000 of federal grants, there was between 46 and 69 jobs created. Small businesses help our economy a lot. There's 60% of the new jobs created in the United States are from small businesses, and there are 56 million members of the private job workforce. There's a lot of benefits to starting your own business. The main one would be financial gain. By owning your own business, it gives you the opportunity to make what you think your job or service is worth. It also allows you to choose your own hours, and although you will not be able to just choose whenever you work when you first start, you'll have to just work when the customer needs you. Once you get your business off the ground, it's a good benefit to be able to start your own and choose when you work. It also allows you to be an employer because I'm sure everyone has worked with someone that they don't think has been qualified for the job. But by being the employer, you get to choose the people you work with by their ability to do the job as you see fit. But along with the benefits, there are also risks. It's not always a guarantee that you'll make money, and there's always a risk that you will lose money in your business. Nothing you do is ever guaranteed, and there's always the chance that your business isn't going to fit. Not every community needs the business that you want to give to it, just like a high-end restaurant would not work here in Willow Springs just because we don't have the economy to support it. Writing a business plan can be a very effective way at helping your business get off the ground. By writing one, you basically explain everything that your business is going to do and what it's doing currently and where all the money you make is going to go. It's basically just a simple or complex, depending on if you want it to be, outline of how your business will operate. It also helps you get a head start because if you're looking to get a loan or want people to help you invest into it, having a good written through business plan can help ensure that they will give you one. I wrote a business plan as my project for a lawn care service. I went through and explained where all the money and would go and what I would invest it into and just what all I'd be doing with that. But that's not the only part of my project I did. I wanted to go back and do this, that's why I jumped at this opportunity, is because my junior year in Miss Berry's class, I got the opportunity to job shadow at Hokomo with a sir named Andy McLean, and I really enjoyed working with him, and I really wanted the opportunity to go back and learn more about how he ran his business and what all he does. So I jumped at this opportunity to be able to do it again. While working at Hokomo, I did a lot of projects. I did landscaping for the Lincoln School in West Plains, and we did all their dirt work and reseeded, so now they have a very beautiful yard now that everything's growing. I learned how to lay flooring for a house, which was a good experience, and I feel like I can use that in the future. I learned how to do driveway work, whether it's spreading gravel or flattening down dirt, just to get it where their driveway wasn't getting washed away. I learned how to do culvert work because before I arrived there, they had a culvert that had not drained properly, so it was flooding. So I learned how to properly install culverts, and I learned about the bagging process that Hokomo does. Along with selling dirt by the truckload, they also have a bagged dirt mix that they sell to Hirsch, so I learned how to use their screener and their bagger to run that. I learned a lot of skills while working with Hokomo. The main one was all the machinery I learned. I learned how to use a skid steer and an excavator, which I feel will really help me in the future. The skid steer we mainly used for smoothing driveways, spreading gravel, most of the landscaping work, but with a grapple attachment, we also used it for moving logs and large piles of brush. And then I used the excavator for the culvert work and ditch digging, which was a new thing for me. I learned how to do a lot of landscaping. Most of the things that Hokomo does is landscaping, although they have other sectors like a dumpster part of their business and the soil that they sell, a lot of it is landscaping. I also learned the flooring, like I said earlier, which I don't think I'll use for a job in the future, but is a good skill to have for when I'm working on a house of my own. Although it was a really fun project, there was some challenges that I faced. The main one was learning a bunch of skills at once. I like learning new things, but it was pretty draining to have to learn all this new stuff and these new techniques all at the same time and try and master them. That way I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. That goes along with the operating new machines. None of the machines I used while working at Hokomo I had used before or even seen the inside of. The closest I'd ever got was a tractor on my farm, which isn't very similar to them. So it took me a little bit to get down all the controls because every machine had different controls and techniques that I'd have to master to get the customer satisfied with my work. And the weather. The weather played a big role in my project because all our vehicles, like you can see in that picture, are tracked vehicles. So anytime it was raining or the ground was wet, we couldn't do a lot of the yard work that we needed to because the tracks would either tear up the customer's yard or we'd end up getting stuck. I hope this presentation helps people to look around and realize that small businesses around us do a lot for us and that we need to appreciate them more. Do my judges have any questions?
So your product is a business plan. Reading if you're going to go to the Air Force. Actually doing something with this business.
I would like to in the future have my own business if I could. Yes. I would like to have one that's either or. I'm okay with either. I like operating the machinery, but I also like doing landscaping, so it's just whatever comes around when I'm back. I think the hardest part was mainly just researching it, figuring out what all I needed and how to do it properly. But I did most of the researching when I was doing my actual product. I read a book and a couple articles about how to write one properly to where it's an effective business plan.
That's kind of a newer element of the senior project. Business plan, what advice would you have?
And say just make sure you do your research properly. That way you have a business plan that you could use for a business if you wanted to. Because mine was a mock business plan. But if they wanted to write an actual one, there's the resources they need out there. You just need to study a little bit for it.
You listed several positives about starting a new small business and about including writing the business plan. What were the biggest negatives that you might
About starting a business?
Yeah, what problems would people What challenges do they have?
I think the main problems are just like you have to find a business that will fit into the community properly. Just like here in Willow Springs, we don't need another cafe. We already have two. And you just have to find what will fit and what people really need. Because if people don't want the business you're putting up, it's just not going to work out. You need to find something that people are interested in and want in their community.
If you had to, think about what the businesses that might have failed, what their biggest issues might have been.
I think with most of the ones around here, because we've had a couple cafes that have gone through and not worked out, I think there's just, they want to open a cafe, but Willow doesn't have the demand for it.
They're just not thinking through the business plan.
Yeah, they know what they want in their mind. It's just not the right area for it. It would probably work out somewhere else. No problem. We're good with this. Excuse me, Kyle. It was all right. Yeah, they asked me a bunch of questions I didn't know, so I kind of bullshitted my way through it. But
But you do. Well, I'm glad it's fun.
yes, thank you. My bad, Cedric. I didn't see you. Huh? I think it went all right. I think it went all right. Did you take the mic? Oh shit. Uh-oh. I gotta bring that back.
Yeah. Just leave it there. When we get close, we'll put it on there.
will you guys please make sure your phones are silenced? And all of our, it's all live streamed, so everything you say will be on live stream. You need anything? I just checking.
Right here's fine.
Judges are just making sure that you have Lucas Martin, 2449. You might want to get there, click it a couple times to make sure.
My judges ready? Hello, I'm Lucas Martin, and this is Arts Odyssey, my project in which I created a comic book / graphic novel. I saw the angel in the marble and carved until I set him free. This is a quote by Michelangelo, who I'm sure you've all at least heard of, maybe once or twice. He is a well-renowned artist, and in his time, he helped to pioneer the advancement of art even to this day. And he was heavily inspired by his beliefs in mythology and religion at the time of his art. And just to go over some of the many ways that art has affected storytelling as well as mythology has affected storytelling as well as art, is The Journey to the West, which is a book written by Wu Cheng'en of the Ming Dynasty. The first 5 chapters of this book go over the tale of a monk traveling west to India in search of sacred scrolls and texts, and mostly the many side quests that he has taken on along this journey. And this creates a very nice narrative of a larger plot with smaller side tracks and small arcs in it, which I think really help carry the narrative in a natural way. But books aren't the only way that mythology has affected storytelling. Yokai have been prevalent throughout most, if not all, of Japanese tradition, and they can come in vastly different forms. Some kind of acting as boogeymen for parents to describe to their children, and others acting as kind of lesser deities for soldiers to pray to before battle to give them the edge in that fight. And nowadays, you can find their influences in virtually any kind of media, whether that's video games or movies, TV shows, the works. And if you aren't studied in their lore, it might be hard to find their specific influences, seeing as they're so vastly different. But after a while of studying them like I have, you can find their influences very interesting. And there have been a lot of Greek influences on art as well. In fact, the earliest influence of Greek mythological motifs in art was dated to be made around the years 1050 and 1000 BC. But bringing it more to a modern time, the modern vocabulary in the English language has been heavily inspired by the Greeks. There are over 150,000 words in the English language that have been inspired by the Greek language, and they were one of the first societies to have a full-fledged alphabet in the first place, which is where we adopted ours from. And the more obvious influences of Greek mythology are modern movies and TV shows, such as Aquaman, Wonder Woman, and even the 1981 show Clash of Titans. Now, you may be wondering why I chose these 2 seemingly random subjects as my senior project, but to go over some of the reasons why I did, art has always been a form of outlet for me to express myself in other ways, whether that's just to myself and I'm just killing time with it, or that's to draw something for a loved one on Christmas or their birthday. It is always a fantastic skill to have as an alternative instead of performing negative acts or words. And with as big of a variety there is in art, it can be overwhelming to enter the art field this late in the game. But the truth is, it's meant to be overwhelming. There's such a variety in art that you can choose different subjects to study instead of all of them at once. And that goes the same with mythology as well. There are vastly different kinds and vastly different cultures that adopt that same story style. But a fairly obvious reason for why I would choose to do art for my senior project would be that I've been doing it for ever since I can remember. And whether those are just poor drawings of like video games that I played as a kid or not, I think these early pieces really lay the groundwork for what I can do now. And this is bringing me to my product and how I have grown since those early days. And as for the experiences I've learned during this project, the first most obvious experience would be that I've been learning how to draw in a digital format as opposed to paper and pencil, and trying to transmit my skills with paper and pencil onto my computer in order to fit a more mainstream style of art. And another experience I've learned with other projects, not just this one, is as an artist, you have to take constructive criticism as just that, criticism. And it's supposed to be constructive, as in helping you build off what you already have. And to really paint you the picture of how I started off with this character and this comic book, the original backstory for this character was meant for a tabletop game I was playing at the time, that being Dungeons & Dragons. And I have had some experience in the past with creating these characters, one of them being Kane, who I was originally going to create this comic about, but then he died, so I figured it would be more obvious to use the living character. And as for the art side of things, I figured the first place to start would obviously be buying the resources so I could actually create art on a digital format in the first place. Thankfully, my mentor knew exactly what I needed, seeing as what he uses every single day for his own art. So that didn't take too long. However, learning the software was an extremely time-consuming portion of this project. And it was very jarring to try and morph my skills with paper and pencil onto the computer because of the lines being much harsher and other difficulties like that. And another huge time consumer was actually creating the product, which did take obviously the most amount of time, but eventually I did finish it, and you can see it right there. And as for the challenges, the first challenge that I've mentioned before is inexperience with this kind of format and this kind of medium before. I've never used it, and getting used to trying to not just sketch over everything and make it kind of messy to make it look normal, and making harsher lines in finished projects is a lot different than what I'm used to. But there have been some benefits to learning this skill as well, seeing as you can make multiple layers and sketch the rough draft on the bottom and then make the harsher lines on top to finish it off. But that wasn't the only challenge I had had before. Artist block, it has been affecting me ever since I started drawing, and pretty much every other artist ever. It's basically like burnout, where you just can't think of any original ideas or concepts to draw or write down depending on your career path. But really the only way to deal with this I've found is just to sit there and deal with it, and eventually you'll break your way through it. Because when you're in a time crunch, sitting there staring at the screen trying to think of something to draw is not the most effective use of time. And to bring an end to these challenges, I bring us back to Michelangelo and his story. Like I said, he was a very well-renowned artist who was inspired by his beliefs in religion and mythology. And he knew that art was a gateway to a brighter world, and that his beliefs and inspirations could help us pave a pathway through that gate. Thank you. Do my judges have any questions?
Kind of a dumb question. But
Yeah.
I haven't done obviously digital arts. Are you just using like a stylus and that's going up on the screen?
Yes, it's a cheaper tablet, so it doesn't have a screen on it. You have to look at the screen while drawing down here, which is a little hard to get used to, but after like a couple sessions, it's pretty simple. Yeah.
Just give kind of an overall plot synopsis of your graphic novel.
Basically, he was a noble-born. This is like a fantasy kind of setting too. He was in a very rich household, but then his grandpa introduced him to this strange sword that had been in his family ever since neither of them could remember. And then eventually some strange individuals came and burned down their mansion in search of them too. Thankfully, the main character escaped and ventured with this sword, learning its abilities, and eventually meeting a group of adventurers where his backstory ends and the actual game began. Sorry? I use Adobe Photoshop, which is expensive but necessary.
Go ahead. You go ahead.
Well, like I said, mostly the things I was looking for in mythology was art and storytelling, and how to structure the stories, and having small arcs within a larger plot. And this is basically just a small arc at the very beginning of his story, because he's still doing stuff right now that we haven't gotten to yet. But yeah, the larger plot is him trying to find his grandpa pretty much, and this is just like the very beginning of that portion.
Does your character follow that Greek mythology? Where did you get the thought process?
Well, It's kind of based off like just a basic like hero's path, pretty much like Odysseus, and kind of going on a large journey. But really, I just like mythology and art, so I tried to group them together as much as possible. Yeah, thank you. What was the title?
We'll get you set up in a second. Do you want to make sure the clicker works? Make sure. Here's your mic. Just clip it on your jacket.
Okay. Is this necessary? I didn't. Yeah. You want to go ahead and? I don't know.
I can get it on your jacket. There we go.
This is some high tech stuff. That's scary. I think I talk pretty loud, so. Are my judges ready? Okay. Our brothers, our sisters, our children, possibly our grandchildren. We think of them as innocent. Maybe batting around a tether ball or spiking a volleyball, maybe even playing a mean game of Foursquare. That's how we think of our middle school children. But that's not the way that it is anymore. And the reality is that most parents don't realize that their children are exposed to illegal substances and just things that aren't good within our own middle school. Hi, I'm Lexi Cravens, and I believe that we should help make our youth aware and guide them throughout their course of life by educating them about illegal substances. So my inspiration behind this, I come from a household that had drugs and alcohol flowing through it. It was very plentiful. And my little brothers were also in that household, and they were exposed to those things at home. But when they started being exposed to these things at school, that's when I realized that our school really had a problem. They were coming home to me with stories on 5th graders being caught vaping in the bathrooms and 7th and 8th graders being caught smoking marijuana on school campus. Also, the younger generation, I've been involved in a couple of churches that I've taught just the younger kids and everything. And personally, I deal with youth better, and I want to make the younger generation better than us. I think that's how it should work. So how does this exactly affect the children? Not only directly, but indirectly. So a parent or guardian is 3 times more likely to abuse, neglect, or just be generally violent around a child in their care. And this leads to trauma, such as like walking on eggshells in your own household, or just like, it can also lead to PTSD and just a bunch of other things that aren't good. But the worst part in this, that I believe, is that making this the norm in your household can cause your kids or other children in your care to follow in your footsteps. And that's not good. But what does it directly affect? It directly affects family, driving wedges between households and all around fights. But not only at home life is affected, school and work, possibly both. Within our school, there's punishments such as being suspended, and like if you get caught vaping, I believe you're in ISS for 3 days and you have to take a test, which I really like about our school because not every school does that. Some schools just send kids home. As for work, you can't show up drunk or high on the job, so I don't think you should be doing it at school because that teaches children it teaches them habit and it makes it a character trait. And reputation. We all know there's certain people within our town that we don't want our children to be like, and I think we should strive to make it to where they aren't. So, sorry, I got a glare. Turning Leaf, it's a really good rehab. I think their main facility is up in West Plains. I've seen a lot of both kids and adults come out there clean. as well as our First Christian Church right here in town. They hold in our Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous meeting 1 to 2 times a week. Really good program. I've seen people strive to stay sober in there, and the people are all around good people. As for my project, I presented to the 7th and 8th grade class, and I'm sure some of you have been around 7th and 8th graders, and they get kind of wild, so I had to really plan out this presentation. I had to do it 4 times because I had to divide it up into quarters of the grades, and I had to keep it interesting. I had to keep their attention, and I had to try to keep it serious because they find a lot of things funny. I also made surveys, it wasn't really part of my project, but I wanted it to be, because I wanted to see where we were really at in our middle school. And it was simple questions like, have you been around somebody doing drugs or alcohol? Have you been offered drugs or alcohol? And it was about 63% of students who had been around drugs or alcohol or around something bad that has happened while one of their parents were on drugs or alcohol. And I think that's terrible. I think we need to get that number lowered. And there was also, the very first question was, have you heard or seen anybody talk about or vape? And a good 75% of those surveys said yes. And there was a maybe question, like a maybe box in case like they weren't quite comfortable saying yes or no. I didn't count those, but there was around like a 10%. So that's roughly a possible 85% chance that they have heard about vaping at school. So these are a couple of pictures off of my presentation, and like I wanted to obviously show them the physical effects, but I really wanted to make them aware of what not only happens to you physically, but also mentally. And I wanted to educate them about drugs and like what they really are and how they really affect your body, like from within and not just the outside appearance. And I also, that Narcotics Anonymous and Alcoholics Anonymous and that rehab that I showed you guys, I actually had that on my presentation, because if any of these kids are fighting addiction, I told them that they could whip out their phones, they could take a picture, because like there's even a helpline that I put on there, a number, an email, the address. I want these kids to get help if they are fighting addiction. Obviously, when you deal with 7th and 8th graders, you're going to have some setbacks. So, dates and times, their classes kind of correlate a little weird. They're not quite like the high schools. So I had to like get them during a PE class, which is why I got the 7th grade too, because originally I was just going to do this for the 8th grade. But I talked to both the Coach Johnsons and Dr. Johnson over at the middle school, and we finally got something that correlated for everybody's schedules, and that was great when it happened. Also, the 7th and 8th graders, like I said, they are rowdy, they are loud. I have to get them to settle down, and they find everything drug, alcohol, or tobacco related humorous. So that was kind of a struggle trying to keep them serious, but I did get some really good questions out of them, and I still get questions out of them. Also, public speaking. This was my worst problem. I am a little better at presenting to younger people. I'm not very good at presenting to my peers or people older than I am. Kind of scares me. Pretty terrifying, actually. But yeah, that was my biggest problem that I had to overcome. But to wrap things up, I think that we could guide our kids and keep them in a healthy and safe environment, just to keep them on the right path. All it really takes is support, a healthy environment, and the help of a school to keep these kids on the right track.
Thank you. Do my judges have any questions?
First of all, Lexi, thank you for stepping up and doing that. For us. If you think about kind of where else can we help? I'm sure your presentation, that's a great start, but what else can we do to help?
Yeah. Well, I really hope somebody carries on, like, because I know there's certain traditions that, like, somebody will see somebody's senior project and they're like, oh, I want to do that next year. I want to do that in 2 years. I really hope somebody takes a look and does that with mine because I really think the kids need it. And sometimes you just need someone around your age, maybe a little bit older, to just tell you, like, hey, this is not all right. Like, this is what could happen to you. Now you guys are going to ask about my poster? You're not going to ask about the name? I'm going to explain it anyway.
Tell us about the name.
So Mythbusters. I don't know if you guys have watched the show Mythbusters. Yeah, that's where it comes from. The meth part is obviously because of drugs, but the reason why I thought of Mythbusters is because my research project was called The Truth Behind Addiction, and Mythbusters kind of like proves something true or false. So I thought, like, hey, Miss Martin was not fond of the name at first, but it grew on her, so yeah.
I just want to tell you that I feel like, and you had said that you don't feel as comfortable speaking, but you did not come across sounding like you were trying to read your paper in your mind that you memorized. You came across very comfortable, like you were just having a conversation with us. So I thought that was really good.
Thank you.
What can we do as a parent, for example, to make sure that our kids stay away from these?
Well, first of all, to keep people are a monkey see, monkey do kind of species. So if you're drinking every night around your kids, by the time they're 13, 14, they're gonna be like, hey, my dad does it every night. It's not that bad. But like, in order to keep kids like just generally away from that idea is to keep all of those things generally away from them, like within your household, because you are the main example that you set for your children. Yeah. Thank you. Oh, no. I'm dying. I was frozen in fear. You guys don't even know. And you're right, I did forget that.
Very proud of you. Good job. Now you can leave.
Yeah.
You tell us, really.
Our sound. Video to hear. I need to be no, we should.
Been listening to you back.
Hard to like navigate
We'll get you some. Don't fret. We will get it. I don't think so. Yes, you just. Oh, once you're ready. You'll give all that to you. Oh, sorry. You're good. We need sound.
TV's not providing sound.
And also I can't get the video. I also can't get the video back. Coordination.
Well, maybe if it plays. Apparently we have a speaker in here, never mind.
Could you talk?
Got a good volume. Did you hear that? Okay, let me start that over if I can.
Judges, I'm just checking that you have MS Spence, session 2473.
Make sure your phones are silenced and we are live streaming, so anything you say will be live streamed.
There we go. Yeah, it probably will. That's what it's been doing. Okay, I can't stop it though. So okay. Oh, look at that! It didn't even play.
Could you tell me what dyslexia is?
It's like a learning disorder associated with reading and writing.
Yeah, so did you say this is a common disorder?
Yeah, fairly common. What is dyslexia?
I think dyslexia is a little disorder where you just read things differently and don't comprehend them the way most other people do.
Yeah. So would you say this is a common disorder?
Somewhat common, and the difference from common, just a little above common. Not very common, but not super.
What is dyslexia?
So I'll tell you what it's not. It's not numbers or backwards, right? Like that, I guess that could technically happen. But our brains are not like necessarily designed to process the written word or numbers all the same way. And so sometimes people just have trouble processing the correct order of the characters in a word or the words in a sentence or just how things go together. And it's just that.
Well, you guys got a sneak peek. Lucky you. Okay, are my judges ready?
Could you tell me what dyslexia is?
It's like a learning disorder associated with reading and writing.
Yeah, so would you say this is a common disorder?
Yeah, fairly common.
What is dyslexia?
I think dyslexia is a little disorder where you just read things differently and don't comprehend them the way most other people do.
Yeah. So would you say this is a common disorder?
Somewhat common, and the difference from common, just a little above common. Not very common, but not super.
What is dyslexia?
So I'll tell you what it's not. It's not numbers or backwards, right? Like that, I guess that could technically happen. But our brains are not like necessarily designed to process the written word or numbers all the same way. And so sometimes people just have trouble processing the correct order of the characters in a word or the words in a sentence or just how things go together. And it's just that.
Dyslexia is a neurobiological reading disorder that is typically identified in children. Roughly 14% of America is challenged with dyslexia. Through research, interviews, and this short video clip that you've seen from my dyslexia documentary, I have discovered that many people are unaware of just how common dyslexia is and what it actually is.
Could you tell me what dyslexia is?
It's like a learning.
You guys didn't want to see that again. Hello, my name is Emma Spence, and schools are becoming more aware of just how common dyslexia is in the classroom, and the need for interventionists is more crucial than ever. So starting out, I was going into my senior year, trying to figure out what to do for my senior project. It had been really stressing me out because I need to have a plan, because that's just who I am. So it wasn't until I took my little sister to a tennis lesson with Coach Rhodes when we started talking about what dyslexia. Her daughter, Sandy Rhodes, is a dyslexic interventionist down in Texas, and they had been discussing the topic of dyslexia. She shared with me that 1 in every 5 students in a typical classroom have dyslexia. Now, I want to be a future teacher, an elementary teacher to be exact, in the future. So if 1 in every 5 students in the classroom has dyslexia, then I need to know how I can best help these learners. But I didn't really know what dyslexia was. I had read it in a book a couple times, I'd seen it on bumper stickers, but that's as far as my knowledge went on what dyslexia was. So I needed to figure that out. So let's start with the dyslexic brain, which is actually a very complex system and it has lots of different components in it. So we'll just give a brief overview of it. Dyslexia is a neurobiological disorder that affects the left hemisphere of the brain. This has to do a lot with phonological processing, which is the word structure of a sentence. So this could be like a child saying wawa instead of water or nana instead of banana. It also affects the rapid auditory processing. So the simplest way for me to try to explain this to you is like, say we're riding in a car going 20 miles an hour, but to the dyslexic learner, it feels like we're going 40. So if I'm speaking to you right now, I'm talking 20 miles an hour, but the dyslexic learner is hearing it super fast, like 40 miles an hour. Dyslexia was identified in the 1600s, and through the years, the research has increased a lot, and we have made much progress to get to where we are today. One of the main topics that I want to hit on is that most of the time, dyslexic learners are often seen as below their expected intelligence level. Now really, these learners could have a much higher IQ than what is seen because they haven't been identified with dyslexia and they haven't gotten the correct help that they need. The earlier dyslexia is identified, the better, because then these students can get the help that they need and they receive new learning strategies to help them in their education. Dyslexia is hereditary, so identifying dyslexia makes it easier because we know that if the parents have it, then that means that more than likely the children will have it as well. So what are states doing about dyslexia? Well, unfortunately, many states are still unaware of how great the need is for dyslexic interventionists, training, and our resources just aren't that strong. And many times, students do not receive the help that they deserve. So this leads to bullying in schools. Many times it's their peers, or sometimes it's even their teachers, because these students are seen as lazy or just not smart enough for school. There's a 35% school dropout rate of dyslexic students. They are 3 to 4 times more likely to drop out of school than normal learners. And this affects their future because once they drop out of school, they don't go to college and they don't get that steady job, and that leads to a steady income. So I wanted to figure out what our school was doing about dyslexia and how well our teachers have been prepared to deal with dyslexia. So I conducted a dyslexia poll. I sent this out to the Willow Springs School staff and I asked them 3 questions. The first being how often they felt they had a dyslexic student in their classroom. As you can see from my data, most of them said occasionally, which this is good, but I really wanted to see every year. Only 8 people responded that they see a dyslexic student every year. My second question that I asked was if they felt they had a dyslexic student in their classroom this year. And as you can see, over half of them said no. And this raised a lot of red flags because, like I mentioned before, 1 in every 5 students in a typical classroom have dyslexia. So we know that most of these teachers have a student with dyslexia in their classroom. The third question that I asked was how well they felt that they were prepared to deal with dyslexia. And as you can see, almost all of them said that they could be better prepared. And this isn't just our school district, this is a lot of school districts around America. We could all be better prepared to deal with dyslexia, whether that be from professional development days, just training in general, and then just finding better resources. So what are some ways that we can help these learners? Well, the biggest way we can help is through encouragement and support. A lot of times, this is just what students need because they feel down about themselves, they get challenged in school constantly, they're constantly put down, they don't have a good self-esteem, and they just feel overwhelmed with the challenges that they're facing. So really, just encouraging and supporting these students to keep going in their schooling is huge. Another thing that teachers can do is to take learning slow. Oftentimes, these students just need to memorize and remember what they learned so that they can go back to what they have already stored in their brain when new subjects enter. And then another way to help is to set goals for these students. Setting goals is huge because once the students reach that goal, they feel a sense of accomplishment, and that's huge and a big motivation to keep going in school. So what I wanted to do for my senior project was to inform teachers, parents, and other students who might not know what dyslexia was more about dyslexia. So I did a dyslexia documentary based on all the research that I found. A big component of my research was my interviews. So I had 2 interviewees with people with dyslexia. I had a dyslexic interventionist, and then I had my mentor. I started with Julie Owens, who has struggled with dyslexia all of her life. She was identified in the 1st grade and unfortunately did not receive the correct amount of help that she deserved. This led her to struggle greatly in school, but still be successful as to where she is today. She just had to learn different strategies and shortcuts herself. Cameron Knight is another student with dyslexia in another school district in Missouri. She's in 5th grade and she struggles with dyslexia. Unlike Julie, she has received the help that she deserves. She went to see a dyslexic specialist, and she has found new learning strategies to help her in education. Her dyslexic specialist was Jacinda Griffin, who I was able to interview. We talked a lot about the interview process, how dyslexia was identified, and what are some ways that teachers, parents, and peers can help these struggling learners. And then I also interviewed my mentor, Sandy Rhodes, who really got me interested in dyslexia and has really sparked my passion for it. The editing process for my video, I use the platform WeVideo because I've had a little bit of editing experience in the past with my news video, our news video at school. I felt confident using WeVideo because I knew it, and so I was comfortable with using it. I had to import my videos that I took from off of Google Drive into WeVideo. I had to clip usually it was my interviews that I had to clip because I videoed them all in one long big video, so I had to section those out to the ones that I needed. I had to do voiceover for statistics, history, things like that, and then I had to adjust my audio of my interviews, voiceover, and music. I put my documentary on YouTube, and I was very pleased with the outcome of it and the feedback that I received from it. But of course, as happy as I was, there were still a few setbacks and challenges along the way. The first being communication. My social awkwardness kicked in when I had figured out that I had to talk to people and interview people for my documentary, but we made it through. It's all good. I also had a couple times where miscommunication happened. I had Cameron, who is in a different school district. We had some miscommunication and we had to change our interview date, but we got it done and it all turned out okay. And I learned some great communication skills along the way. The second challenge that I faced was my technology skills. Like I mentioned, I've had a little bit of editing experience, but not nearly as much as what was required for my documentary. I learned a lot of new skills that I probably wouldn't have learned otherwise. And then my third and final challenge, probably the hardest challenge for me, was narrowing down my research. Dyslexia is a very vast, wide topic, and there's a lot of different things that go into it. So really narrowing down what I wanted to put in my documentary was a really hard thing, because you can either just stay at the basic level or you can get really deep into it. I decided to stay just at the basic level because I wasn't sure who all would be watching my documentary and what audience I was going to be appealing to. Schools are becoming more aware of just how common dyslexia is in the classrooms and are finding out that the need for interventionists is increasing. Mr. Scott Sonnen is a martial arts world champion and author, and he said it best: "I didn't succeed despite my dyslexia, but because of it. It wasn't my deficit, but my advantage." I encourage you that after listening to this presentation, that this has really sparked an interest in you about dyslexia, and I encourage you to find out more about it and help these dyslexic students. Thank you. Do my judges have any questions?
Do you think that having research and studies more as you go into your teaching career, you'll focus a bit more on something like this?
Yeah,
or-
I definitely think that it will be a lot easier to identify the struggling learners because I've done this research. So I will know some of the symptoms that dyslexic learners show, so I will be able to help them better, yes. Any other questions? Yes.
In your research, did you find anything that helps students with dyslexia?
Just making sure that teachers are slowing down the learning process is really important. And that's something that I really didn't think about because they have this lesson plan and the structure that they have to follow. So it just hadn't occurred to me that we can like slow it down for them so that they can memorize it better. Anybody else? Thank you guys so much. I'm glad that's over. Oh yeah, sorry. Oh wait, I guess I should take it off. Sorry.
Good job, Emma. Every time I breathe, I hear this. Studio. Yeah, I don't know if that'll help. Yeah, okay. So, okay. Yeah, so now, it's fine, but I didn't see it. I knew it was still going. This is program we use for life. So I'm kind of familiar with it. I am not.
No, isn't that crazy?
No, thank you. No, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I still have 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 7 years.
Yeah, she's great.
I just got those grades, session 2 today. So now you bring it up.
Good to see you. You're judging, I guess.
Well, I think that last one, but I want to say, Emma.
I'm sorry, but you. I know. It's short.
Good to see you.
This
She
is
did a
such
great
a.
job. Yes, thank you.
I don't know. My mom's in the camera. Bye. Love you. Love you.
Uh, 376, yeah. And then 2477. 2477.
You can put it on that. You have 40.
They all react like that.
In here. I'm ready. I'm just. Sorry about two.
Just wanted to remind you, this is a live feed, so everything you say is recorded. And I want to make sure that you have Dakota Tucker 2477.
This. Is it just next?
You may have to stand up there and point this way. Towards me. Yep.
Try the other side.
Will you bring it here, please?
Off.
Maybe I don't even look.
Oh.
I just have to work.
We're gonna blame Dr. Spence for that one. Like his fault.
any other website, actually.
Nuh-uh.
No, seriously, we haven't.
I guess you just need to sit in here. Our clicker is not working. That's our issue.
On the slide.
Call you again. Go ahead and click that on your shirt. It just clips. Oh my gosh. Are my judges ready? This is my family in 2016. Without knowing any information, looking at these photos, you'd see an average middle-class Willow Springs family. However, that was not the case. Although my family and I put masks on this day and dressed up for family pictures, the reality behind my everyday life was the beginning of my parents' very long and tragic drug addiction. Hello, my name is Dakota Tucker, and I believe that drug use not only deeply affects the user, but also affects the family in a negative way. To understand what drug addiction is, you first need to understand how addiction stands alone, and that is the fact or condition of being addicted to a particular substance, thing, or activity. Addiction can vary all the way from a small food addiction all the way to an alcohol addiction that is ruining a family. And what makes addiction even worse is that you can choose to do all the right things and still become addicted. And that is because addiction has no bias. It doesn't matter your race, economic status, or gender. Anyone can become addicted to anything, but there are particular risk factors that can increase your likeliness of an addiction, and those include mental health disorders, lack of family involvement, early access, and how addictive the object is. Drugs are any chemical that, when consumed, make a change in the organism's physiology and even its psychology if applicable to the drug. According to the United States National Survey of Drug Use and Health, 46.8 million Americans are addicted to drugs. That is 60% of our country, and a crisis that is growing in numbers every day. But it is not only affecting our economy, it's also affecting individual American citizens. Although 84% of our country is not addicted to drugs, like I said before, this is a crisis that is growing in numbers every day, and this is how. According to Los Angeles criminal lawyers, minors make up about 5% of the United States drug use. And although that sounds like a small percentage, that is 2.4 million minors addicted to drugs. As a high school student, I unfortunately know that drugs are easily accessible to people our age, and when they are introduced and used, it almost always comes down to bad influences and peer pressure. This is because the human brain does not fully develop until you're in your mid-20s, not only making it harder to say no, but also making the drugs more hard-hitting on the brain and making the substances more addictive. And this is not the only way addiction can begin. Environmental factors play a huge part in people's choices, meaning their family's attitudes towards drugs and exposure to peer groups that influence it. And genetic factors are the same way. If the person beginning to use drugs has had a genetic trait passed down to them, this can speed up or delay the progression of drug use. I'm sure some of you know, but if not, I can tell you the physical appearance of someone while using drugs versus recovery completely changes. For reference, this is my mom. All drugs affect the body differently, but all drugs affect the body in a negative way. Drugs like marijuana and inhalants only leave short-term effects like red eyes, while on the other hand, misusing pain medications and using hard drugs like methamphetamines can make a person nearly unrecognizable. Using those hard drugs cause extreme weight loss, tooth decay, decreased growth to the user's hair and nails, and scabs to the skin. Even when the user is in recovery, they can gain their weight back, and their hair and nails can always start growing correctly, but healthy teeth and clear skin without scars is something that's irreplaceable. The way drug use affects an entire family has always been a known thing, but has only recently received scientific attention. Through psychiatric research, we have learned that around 29% of families with a user develop 5 categories of family roles based upon how each family member copes with the situation. The first one being the addict. In my situation, this was my parents. They became the focal point of the family and created all of the problems in the home. Majority of the time when you have a parent that plays this role, you have the oldest sibling stepping up for the youngest siblings to take care of them. And that's where my role came in, the hero. The caretaker is often compared to the hero, but is known to enable the addict, my grandparents. These people think that if you give the addict what they want, that they will change paths, when in reality, they're just becoming a source to the problem. The scapegoat is the person that acts out, no matter if it's in legal trouble or just in school. If they're a child This is their way of getting some attention onto them, and they don't even realize that they're acting out. And the lost child. This is in a family dynamic where there are multiple children, one being an addict and two parents. This is because the parents get so wrapped up in their addicted child's addiction that they often forget about their other children. When there is not all 5 roles in an addiction, the addiction is handled at a different approach. And when a child lives in a household with addictive tendencies, they are most impacted by the addiction. And there are 1 in 8 children who live in those circumstances. All children tend to cope in similar ways, but what matters is if the child comes from a 1-parent or a 2-parent home, and whether or not 1 parent or 2 parents are addicted. Children who come from 2-parent homes with 1 sober parent have a lot more stability because that sober parent will step up for the child. Children who come from a single-parent home or 2-parent homes where both parents are addicted grow up without any support, and they have a lot of similarities because they have nobody to turn to. But no matter which home the child comes from, both children grow up in unpredictable environments, often hiding secrets from peers, friends, and teachers, all while trying their best just to take care of themselves. Because I was a child in addiction, when thinking about my project, I knew I wanted to do something that would spread awareness of the situation, let others know that if they were in this situation that it would be okay, but also to let peers know how one small decision could influence your entire future. So for my project, I decided to teach the freshman health classes about drug awareness. I taught all 4 of the health blocks, and these classes consisted of a 30-minute presentation from me, almost like the information I provided to you right now, just a little bit more age appropriate, and a 20-minute video of my mom describing her addiction from the beginning to the end. After the students watched my presentation and the video, I passed out red bandanas, red representing drug awareness, and they played sensory games representing how drugs affect our bodies. For the first game, I put a picture of a car up on the board and asked the students to draw it while looking at it and copying it the best they could. After they were done with that, I asked the students to use the bandanas as blindfolds and try drawing the exact same car that they had just drawn, but without being able to see. Some of the students panicked, but most of them had fun trying to draw the same car and win the prizes that I provided. And although the games were intended to be fun, I did make a point during each block to ask the students if they understood what the games were representing, and I think that my lesson came across very well. And even though I thought my project went great, I did have a few challenges. The first one being my leadership skills. I had never taken speech before my project, so getting up in front of a class and taking control was something that was really out of my comfort zone, and it took me at least 1 entire class before I really settled in and got comfortable. And like I said before, the students had bandanas, but they almost didn't, and that's because I procrastinated and waited until the week before to order them. Coach Pitts told me to expect about 80 to 100 students to teach, so finding an order that would accommodate that many that would also come in in time was something that was a big challenge. And I knew I wanted my project to be long-lasting even after the class, so I wanted to cricket a Bible verse on each of the bandanas before I passed them out. So I borrowed a Cricut and I bought the materials and I set up a time with my mentor, and after 2 to 3 hours of messing with the Cricut, my mentor and I realized that it doesn't do what we actually wanted it to do. So it ended up being a lot of wasted time and wasted materials, and in the end, I bought fabric markers for the students, which I think ended up making it more personalized for every student. And just like I was able to overcome these challenges, my family was able to overcome many challenges throughout the years. This is my family now. Just like looking at the first slide, looking at these photos, you would see an average middle-class Willow Springs family. And although that is the truth behind the photos this time, the difference between the first picture of slides that I showed you and these pictures is that we are missing a family member. Through my parents' long addiction, they got associated into a bad group of people and made unimaginable choices to a sober person, ultimately leading to my dad losing his life. Although my story is an unfortunate one, it is what drives me to spread awareness of the situation and help our future generations. Thank you. Do my judges have any questions?
Great project.
Thank you.
Sharing all that. What was the biggest challenge freshman that had to be hard?
Yeah,
Peers is a whole other.
it wasn't really peers that it was the problem. I think it was the age group. It was more of like trying to come up with stuff that was age appropriate, but also not sugarcoating it too much. And then when teaching it to them, hoping that they received it appropriately and not like immature. But I think it went across really well, like how I intended it for it to. So. Thank you. Tell me what my time was.
remind you guys, you're on live stream, so everything you say is recorded.
We have a couple of minutes. We'll shut the door. Okay, thank you. Am I supposed to stand on that side? Am I supposed to stand on that side too? Okay. Okay. Oh, okay. The bottom's a little broken. Are my judges ready? Growing up, I didn't have a problem with education. I was always really good at reading and math, just like everyone else around me, or so I thought. I didn't realize until a little later in life that people actually do have a problem with education. But even when I knew this, I didn't really understand how. Hello, my name is Taylor Bruning, and childhood literacy is more important than most people think. Everyone knows that reading at a young age is highly beneficial for school, but especially in the beginning years. Children that read at a young age have such an advantage at school because they're introduced to reading comprehension. Reading comprehension is whenever you're able to look at text and understand the message behind it or get meaning from it. This is often mistaken, as some people believe that just picking out a couple words at a time or a couple sentences at a time equates to reading comprehension. This is what non-proficient readers struggle with compared to their proficient partners. Proficient readers understand that reading comprehension they understand reading comprehension. They understand that if they read a paragraph and they move on to the next page of their book, they understand what's going on. Non-proficient readers do not make sense of reading, and in fact, they understand by decoding it one word at a time or one sentence at a time. This is important to fix early on because in 2013, the National Assessment of Educational Progress found that more than 60% of American fourth graders struggled with reading comprehension. This is so important to fix at a young age because these students were more likely to be unemployed, live below the because they live below the poverty line, be unemployed, not vote in elections, and not volunteer in charities. So, reading is widely theorized and researched when it comes to schooling, but I want to look at what it does for children themselves. Early development is one of the most important stages that a person goes through in their lifetime. This is because you're introduced to your cognitive development. Cognitive development is whenever you start to understand things around you. It's when you start to remember and problem solve and make your own decisions. Reading supports cognitive development so much because it gives children an insight of what's going on in their world when they have no clue what's going on in their world. In a study of toddlers' cognitive development, they found that the child that was being read to, only in a matter of seconds, thousands of cells were responding in the child's brain. And in an IRA position post, it states that in the first few years of life, more than 1 million new neural connections are formed every second. With this claim, it's supported that reading strengthens a child's vocabulary and gives them more insight about their world when read to. And looking on the brain side of things, it's also important to look at the child's behavior in their early years. Books give children an opportunity to be more empathetic because books explain things that children may not be open to yet, such as like certain hardships, such as religions, traditions, culture, and family. For example, when kindergarten age Korean American children were given books about different stuff, including these 4 things, they came out more open and opinionated about these things, giving them their attitudes reduced, like their negative attitudes reduced, and they were more open to making diverse friends. When it comes to what it does for children, I want to look at something that may not be looked at much when it comes to reading, and that's the relationships that it can bring. Relationships are important among adults relationships are important for children just as much as adults. When a parent sits down and reads to a child, it gives them this emotional and physical interaction that is more important than just watching TV with them or playing a video game with them. This is because it includes this emotional and physical interaction that stimulates a social, emotional part of the child's brain. And it promotes this closeness that is good at such a young age. And a good example of this is by Erica Kozimar. She states that her and her son used to read Curious George Goes to the Hospital every night. And after a while, her son began to recite every single word in the book. And at first, her and her husband were a little confused and they didn't understand why, but later on they realized that this was his way of getting to connect with them and he memorized the book in order to connect with them and share this experience with them. She goes on to say that in the book, George goes to the hospital because he swallowed this puzzle piece that needed to be removed through surgery. She describes the fear George felt when he was told and when he entered the hospital, and the relief he felt after leaving and the surgery was complete. She explains this because her son himself had to get a surgery to get his adenoids removed, which are glands in the back of your throat. She states that her son went through this difficult time in a positive way only because he reciprocated these feelings of bravery that George had in the book. So when it came to my product, knowing a little bit more about some of the importance behind reading, I knew I wanted to help children in some way. So I created a book club for 2nd graders in order to get them more involved with reading. First things first that came with my project was I had to decide the dates on when I would do the book club, and I ultimately decided October because it was based around the fall theme and it was before all this bad weather came and hit, making it easier for parents. I decided October 4th, 11th, 18th, and 25th because it was every Wednesday in October, giving me a clear shot of everything good, and Wednesday wasn't just some random day of the week, it was the middle of the week, easy to remember. So after I did this, I knew I had to get to the parents somehow, and I did this by creating this letter. It stated the dates, the times, what would happen if your child misbehaved, and certain things like that. And it came along with the signature page that came with allergies because the children would be having snacks, and what they would like and dislike. So when I got the snacks, I would know where to kind of aim for. After I did this, I had to decide the books, snacks, and activities. I held off on choosing the snacks and the activities because it was just, I wanted it to be different each week. So I waited to see how week 1 went and then week 2. So I decided these books in the very beginning. I chose Spookily the Square Pumpkin, Pumpkin Soup, Apple Trouble, and Pete the Cat Falling for Autumn because they were also different in a way that I could create a snack and activity out of them. To kind of break it down, I created this table for you, and I'm not going to read them all because that would take some time. But for example, week 1, we read Spookily the Square Pumpkin, And for their snack, they got to make their own pumpkin by using graham crackers and icing on top of them with chocolate chips and little candy eyes. And then for their activity, they kind of had the same thing of building their own pumpkin with colored paper, pipe cleaners, glue, and tape. I did this way because the moral of the story was that it was okay to be different. So here's week 1. You could see me reading to them one of the snacks that the children created and the activities that the children, like all of their finished products. They had a great time with week 1, and all of them came back for week 2, which for week 2, we did pumpkin soup. And so for their snack, they were able to have a mixed component of different things like pretzels and marshmallows and candy corn, like soup. And then for their activity, they got to paint their own wooden spoons so that if they had a bowl of soup, they could start with the spoon. And if you notice this girl right here, I thought hers was super cool because she painted a tree in the nighttime with leaves trickling down the handle of the spoon, which was really creative, and I loved it. And then for this one, this kid created Frankenstein, which it was more fall themed, but I let him. And the important thing about this one is he created green out of only red, orange, yellow, brown, black, and white. So I didn't know how he did it, and I thought that was cool to include because it just shows how creative these kids are. For week 3, we read Apple Trouble, and for their snack, they had sliced apples with caramel to dip them in and marshmallow fluff and a couple other things. And then for activity, they got to create a hedgehog out of fake leaves, colored pencils, and glue, and sometimes tape because glue didn't dry fast enough. And they did this because the hedgehog was the main character in the book. For week 4, we read Pete the Cat Falling for Autumn, and their snack was kind of the same as week 1, and I wasn't too thrilled about it, but they still loved the snack. And then for their activity, they got to make Pete the Cat out of their own hand and use popsicle sticks to make the fence that he would be sitting on, and some of them added pumpkins to the bottom of their fence. Even though my product went so smooth and everyone had a great time at the book club, I did have a couple challenges that I had to work through. And the first and foremost was that in the very beginning, like I said, I did not know how to reach out to parents. So I created a flyer at first. It had the dates and the times, but it didn't have much information. And it didn't have enough. And I created this at first because I wanted it to look exciting to children and stuff like that. But my mentor suggested that I went with the letter, and it went so much more smooth. My second thing was that I had to deal with being more flexible with people's ideas and opinions and advice, because when I have something correlating to my own project and how it will turn out, I tend to like to do it on my own because that's just how it usually works for me. But with this project, I knew I had to take the advice of others and their ideas, and I got over that pretty quickly, and I wasn't opposed to it. First, for the final one, I struggled with being prepared for a little bit of it, and specifically when it came to the snacks and the activities, because like I said, I only picked the books in the very beginning. I did not focus on the snacks and activities until a couple days before or the day before, because I wanted to see how week 1 would go, and then I was a little busy later in the week, or sometimes me and my mentor would only meet up that Monday or Tuesday before the Wednesday of the activity. But all in all, I learned how to be more prepared and be more responsible about it, and it came in handy later on in the book club. I didn't say this before, yes. Let me remind you that I did not struggle growing up when it came to education or understanding people's thoughts and feelings, or even having a rough relationship with my parents. We had great relationships. And I didn't realize it then, but I realize now that I owe some of that to reading. My parents sat down with me and they interacted with me with literacy in a way that impacted me for the rest of my life. So if you didn't understand the importance of reading before, I hope you do now. Thank you. Do my judges have any questions? Yes. I'm sorry? Yes, I'm going to be an elementary teacher. They were second graders, so they were about 8 years old, I think, which isn't in the early development part, but even then, it's never too late to start reading or getting involved in that. Any more questions? I had about 8 to 10 each week. Sometimes it would get up to 12, I think.
Were they all levels of readers or?
I think so. I think so. But when I was reading with them and to them, I would make sure to like stop on every couple of pages and be like, "All right, guys, what do you think's happening here?" And they were all like, I know," and it was great. Okay, thank you. I can't get it off. There we go.
Of course. Yes, just a moment. We have about 5 minutes. Do you want to go ahead and take it, or do you want to wait a second? I'll wait a second. Okay.
Judges, I'm just making sure you have Ally Mattingly, session 2450.
That's perfect.
That side.
Where you are. I think we have to wait till the actual start time. Yeah. 3 minutes. You don't have to stand there. Walk around, make yourself more nervous.
I'll mic you up. Be ready.
I just wanted to remind everybody that you're on the live stream, so we can.
You want to just clip that? I'm sure there's like a little clippy. Okay. Just like. Okay. It's like it's kind of leaning
Nope,
outside.
that's perfect.
Okay. So I'm just gonna test it. Yeah. So, okay. Are my judges ready? Where does your mind go when you think of the word art? Does it go to people like Leonardo da Vinci or Vincent van Gogh? If you said yes, then you have the wrong idea. Art is very widespread and is very important in everyday life. Hi, my name is Ali Mattingly, and I believe that art is a beneficial and important part of a child's life and education. Since I was a little kid, I have always loved art, whether it was drawing or painting or even doing any kinds of arts and crafts. It has always been something I went to. It's always been something that I knew I would enjoy. Not only did I do it as something fun, I also used it as an outlet. It was something to do when I was upset or mad at something. I could do that and do that instead of taking it out on other people. And finally, art teaches a lot of patience, whether you want it or not. You need to have patience when you do art because you're gonna mess up, you're gonna forget a step, or you're gonna bump something and knock over your painting, you know. You're gonna mess up, but you just gotta keep going and even do it again if you have to. So you have to learn patience whether you like it or not if you wanna do art. And it also teaches you creativity because the more you do it, the more things you learn and the more ways you realize you can do it. There are many benefits of art, but one of the physical benefits is it can help your brain cognition, which in return can help your immune system. There's also a lot of benefits to boosting your confidence because when you create a piece of art, you do something that you may not have even realized you could do. And when you do something new that you didn't realize was possible, you start to feel proud about yourself and realize and be more confident and independent and realize that you can do more and push yourself to do more in that process. Art is a really good emotional outlet. It's a really good outlet for negative emotions because, like I said before, instead of going and lashing out on someone else or anything, whether it be like hurting yourself or someone or just yelling, art is a better way to work on something and calmly do it instead of trying to take out your anger in other people. It's also a really good healthy coping mechanism. When you do art, it can help you calm down and it can like take your mind off of everything and you kind of go into your own little world. And so then you forget about everything else that you may have been thinking about 20 minutes ago, and now you're just thinking about how are you going to draw this flower. It's a really good way to take your mind off something and calm yourself down. And it's also really good because whether you go through something traumatic or something minor, you're going to have to find closure. And so in the process of taking your mind off of it and learning to deal with it, you can find closure. And it's a really healthy way of doing that. Art is a really good way to express yourself, and one of those ways is through art therapy. Art therapy is for people who have trouble speaking their emotions verbally. It's a really good way to express how they feel, especially to their family or a therapist, without having to say it directly so that they can maybe feel a little more comfortable about how they do it. Like I said before, a lot of people who do art therapy are not very good with verbal communication. So it is a really good way to do that. And this is also really well known for people with ASD or autism spectrum disorder. A lot of people with ASD have a lot of trouble verbally communicating what they feel. So this is a especially good way for people with ASD to express themselves so that they can get the help they need. Like I said, ever since I was a little kid, I've loved art. And I've always loved working with kids, so I want to do something to combine that. So that is why for my project, I chose to do a coloring book. This coloring book has 20 pages, and it has all kinds of different animals from pictures I took at the zoo, Branson Zoo, and it also has fun fact pages within that book
so that it's also can be educational. The first thing I had to do was go to the zoo. I had to take photos of all of the animals. Some were a little more difficult than others because animals aren't always models. But after I went to the zoo, I had to get to the printing process, which was a little difficult because I actually had to send that to someone's phone and then send that person had to send it to a teacher's email to get them to print. But eventually I got them all printed and could start sketching. I have never drawn animals before, and when I tried, it never worked out. So this was a struggle for me, but I wanted to challenge myself. So that is why I chose to draw animals, and I slowly started to get the idea. After I completely finished all the sketching, I outlined everything in Sharpie and erased all the extra lines. And after that, I took photos of everything and put it onto a website where I could organize everything on Canva. And like I had to transfer it to digital. And then after I did that, I had to edit and finish up. So I used Photoshop, which I had never used before. And I didn't quite understand how complicated Photoshop was at the moment. And I actually had to get a little cheat sheet of the controls from a teacher. Thank you, Mr. Knapp. And or I probably wouldn't have got that done. But after that, I ended up having to go to a different building that had in the school and then use a Word computer and get the file on there and then have that emailed to me and transferred to me so I could use it on a Chromebook or any kind of other desktop. So that was difficult, but after that I could finally finish printing and stapling all of the coloring books. There are many challenges in this project that I faced, but one of them was scheduling because I can't drive and that makes things a little difficult. And on top of that, it was high school, beginning of high school. I'm trying to get everything figured out. So it was just difficult to find time, especially to get to the zoo in the beginning because there was so much stuff going on. Second, like I said before, I had never really drawn animals before. So this was a whole new drawing style for me. And I'm glad I did it because it challenged me. But it was definitely a challenge and it was fun, but I'm glad I did it. Another thing was money, because finding enough money to get to the zoo was one thing. But after that, I learned that I initially wanted to do the front cover and all the fun fact pages in color. But I realized colored ink is not quite cheap. And on top of that, I want to do the front and back page in cardstock. And that's also expensive when you're wanting to print over 100 copies. So I learned that I had to do it in black and white and just normal paper because it was way too expensive to print all of them. Another thing was the editing and printing process because like I said before, I had never worked on Photoshop. But another thing was when I printed them, some of the names got cut off and then parts of it got cut off and some stuff looks a little spotty, but I just had to work with it because it's what I did and I was still very proud of the process. And the last thing that was much of a challenge for me was improvising because the first thing was my mentor, not because of her, I realized couldn't do a lot because I didn't realize how much of it was going to be online, and she's an art teacher. And so she couldn't really help me as much as I had hoped she could. So I actually had to go to multiple other teachers to get help because she could only do so much with what I wanted to do. With challenges, you're going to learn stuff. Some of the things that I learned was a new drawing technique because even though drawing animals was struggling, I actually learned a lot and how to do it, and it was actually quite fun after I got the hang of it. Another thing was time management because I can sometimes be a procrastinator. And I learned that you cannot procrastinate your senior year because it will not end well. And I learned that deadlines will sneak up on you even when you think you have extra time. And I learned to organize and manage that time so that I don't run out and stress more than I need to. Another thing was editing. I learned how to use Canva. Honestly, I didn't really know how to use Canva before this. And I learned a little bit about Photoshop. I'm not going to say I remember everything, but I learned how to organize and use Canva, and it was a nice thing to learn. And finally, I learned patience because yes, you learn patience when you learn art, but you learn a lot of patience when you do a senior project because things did not always go the way I wanted to, and I couldn't just give up. I had to keep going and find new ways to persevere, and that's what I did. So I wanted to do something that would combine my love for art and my love for children, and that's exactly why I did, and that is why I created The Wonders of Wildlife. Thank you. Do my judges have any questions? Yes. Sorry, I forgot to say that. I handed them out to the 4th grade. Yeah, all of the 4th grade got a coloring book. Well, I didn't like go back, but when I was handing them out, I had multiple kids say, "You drew that?" So it made me feel a little good about it.
When I brought 5th graders over, they were excited to handed a couple of them out.
Yeah.
And then we got back, they were like, "Oh, can you color, can you color?" Because they don't get a lot of time to color.
Yeah.
But yeah, they'll enjoy it. I'm gonna give them time.
Well, I'm glad.
Glad to see you're still in art.
I want to be an elementary art teacher, actually. Also, I actually have the coloring book here if anyone would want to look at it. You're welcome. It's been kind of handled, but
That's all right.
one middle schooler tried to bend the pages. And I was like, no. Thank you. Yeah. Or anyone who wants to look at it. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, yeah, sorry.
The zebras were the hardest. Yeah, that was that. I honestly had a lot of trouble wanting to finish that one because there were so many little lines. Thank you.
And the next one starts at 6:40. Nolan, you'll probably have to put that on the other side so we get you on the camera. Just right in front of that board is fine, and then you can just stand between that and the screen.
Very much.
Judges, I'm just making sure you have Nolan Perkins, session 2461. Another reminder, we are on live stream, so everything that you say is recorded.
Anywhere? Is it too close or too far? Hello, 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 hello. Okay.
And it should be ready. You want to get there and test it first?
Okay. My judges ready? The year is 1991, and Pearl Jam has just released their single, Jeremy. Along with Jeremy came a music video. When Pearl Jam would go to present this music video to MTV, they would request that a scene be censored. Pearl Jam consented, and after this scene was censored, this would become known as one of the most controversial music videos of all time. Hi, I'm Nolan Perkins, and I wanted to research how one creates a music video in the history of music videos. So let's talk about a quick history of the sound and film. The very first advancements in this technology is the Magic Lantern. The Magic Lantern was released in the late 1800s, and it is basically known as what we refer to as today as an overhead projector. It would enhance a painting and then project it onto a wall. A couple of publishers got a hold of one, and they got an orchestra together, put a Magic Lantern behind the orchestra, and had it put images behind the orchestra. This is referred to as one of the very first music videos. In the mid-20s, the World War I had just ended. The economy was booming. People were going out on the town, and they were going to the cinema, and they were watching movies. But there was an issue. There was no sound in the movies. If there was any sound in the movie theater, it was a person physically sitting in the movie theater playing a piano or an organ. That all changed in 1927. In 1927 was the release of The Jazz Singer. The Jazz Singer is referred to as one of the very first movies to have sound paired with the actual film. This erased the need of having an actual person inside the movie theater playing the piano or the organ. With this new technology advancement, artists would already see a way to use this as a way to advertise their music in the form of a performance music video, which we'll see start booming later in the 50s and 60s. In the 50s and 60s is a new genre of music is out, and it's called rock and roll. Rock and roll and music videos go hand in hand, as at this time with the new performance music video, it was a way to advertise their music. A really good example of this would be Elvis Presley's Jailhouse Rock, which is not exactly a performance music video. It's actually one of the very first story music videos. But a good example for a performance music video would be We Can Work It Out by the Beatles. The Beatles were not only good musicians, but they were also good businessmen. They saw that a lot of their market was over here across the pond in the United States, so they thought, why not create a performance music video so we don't have to go and tour all the time in the United States. With this new performance music video, this would be referred to as the birth of the modern music video. So the year is 1975, and Queen has just released his new song, Bohemian Rhapsody. This is also referred to as one of the greatest story music videos of all time, and it has a storyboard, a cast list. So with this new music video, this new format of music video, people would see the need to have a network that is streaming music videos 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. On August 1st of 1981, screens in New Jersey, TV sets in New Jersey lit up with the image of the very first space shuttle launch. A man's voice came over the television set that said, "Ladies and gentlemen, rock and roll." The Buggles' "Video Killed the Radio Star" started playing, and its music video. This would really foreshadow the sheer dominance that MTV would have over the market over the next 2 decades, as if you're at home, you're not turning on the radio, you're turning on the television set, and you're tuning in to MTV. After a couple of years of MTV being out, there was a blatant elephant in the room, though. There was no black artists on the network. We would see artists like Rick James come forward and say that the network is blatantly racist, as they will not play his music video for his song Super Freak. We even see David Bowie coming forward and saying that they're obviously not playing black artist music, and that it's ridiculous because they said that black artist music doesn't fit the format of the network, and it is referred to as music television and not rock music television. The controversy does not end there, though. Madonna is referred to as the Queen of Pop, but she also is referred to as the Queen of Controversy. One of her very first controversies would be her song Like a Virgin, where she talks about the sensitive topic of having sex for the first time. But the song we're talking about today is Like a Prayer. In the music video for Like a Prayer, we see Madonna witness a black man be accused of a crime he did not commit and incarcerated by the police. She then runs to a church where she falls in front of an altar, starts praying, and eventually falls asleep. The altar is depicting a black Jesus. In her dream, she sees herself having an interracial kiss with the black Jesus, and this is one of the very first interracial kisses ever seen in a music video. We also see images of burning crosses. Now, a lot of people think that this is taking a shot at Christianity. In reality, she's actually using the images that the Ku Klux Klan used of their burning crosses. 40 years ago, Madonna was already trying to make the connection that racial injustice is a big thing and that police brutality does exist. And 40 years later, we still do struggle with those two topics. In 1991 is the release of Pearl Jam's LP 10. On this LP came the song Jeremy. Jeremy tells the tragic story of a child who was suffering from bullying and mental health issues. He one day went to school, pulled a gun out, And instead of turning it on his classmates like we would think in our modern day, he turned it on himself. So in the music video that they released, they did depict that. They had an artist playing Jeremy insert a gun into his mouth. The screen will then cut to black, and it shows his classmates. This is a video that did end up airing on, or not end up airing on MTV. Now this is graphic. Please beware. You can see in the music video the artist or the actor does insert the gun into his mouth. The screen cuts to black, and when it comes back, we can see all of his classmates are covered in what's supposed to be Jeremy's blood, and they are all in shock. If we cut to what MTV played with it, it shows a completely different story. With MTV censoring, it now looks like Pearl Jam is depicting a school shooting, when they were in fact just trying to show that bullying exists and mental health needs to be monitored in school. So if we go ahead and play what this video looks like, we can see in the cut version that was played on MTV, the child in fact looks like he has an evil look in his eye. And when the screen cuts to black and comes back, it looks like the child or the children are not covered in their own blood, and it looks like the Pearl Jam is trying to depict a school shooting. We would even see a couple years later, a child would go on to end up shooting up his own school, and in court said this was the music video that would go to drive his school shooting. So Pearl Jam was just trying to bring attention to mental health issues and bullying, and this was the outcome from the censoring. So at this point, you might be asking me, why would I want to research such a topic? Why would I want to learn how to create a music video? And why would I want to know about music? Well, to start with, I was introduced to music at a very young age. Instead of being sung lullabies, my parents blessed me by putting on Aerosmith's debut album, and I would get to hear Steven Tyler's voice and Joe Perry's beautiful guitar playing. My grandpa was also a very big inspiration. Whenever I was younger and all the way up until the day he passed 4 years ago, he was the lead singer at my church. My grandpa was my superhero, and I always wanted to be like him. Watching him get up in front of people and sing to all my church, I really wanted to do that, and I just wanted to be exactly like my grandpa. I also learned an instrument at a very young age. Obviously, in elementary school, we had the recorder lesson, and that was awful. But when I was 10 years old, my grandparents gave me my very first acoustic guitar. I learned the basic G, C, and D chords, and after that, they gifted me my very first electric guitar. After that, my learning experience was exponential. I also wanted to learn how to produce a video. My favorite, like I said, I have a very big passion for music. I also have a passion for film. So I thought, why not combine the two things and make one fun project, one fun senior project, and that is creating a music video. So what did the final piece look like, and what were my steps to finalizing the product? Well, to start with, I had to create a storyboard. After I had got done storyboarding, I had 197 shots listed. We'll come to find out later, that was way too many. I would not have enough time for that, so I'd have to cut it back. I also had to make a cast with 197 shots. There would obviously be a certain amount of cast members. I had 20 people that I needed to cast, and before I had decided to cut it all back, I had 15 of them casted. I also had to learn how to do different kind of filming, and I also learned how to be like a basic director. Mrs. Lee would actually be the one that films, but I would have to be the one that tells her kind of what I'm looking for and exactly like where I want the cameras to be at. And finally, I'd have to learn how to edit. I kind of had, a little bit of editing experience up to this point. Bear Media, I'm in Bear Media classes, and I created a couple of different like club highlight videos for the school, but I hadn't done a project this intense up to this point. I had to download an editing software referred to as DaVinci Resolve, which is comparable to Adobe products, which cost hundreds of dollars a year, and DaVinci Resolve is free. And in this modern day and age, learning how to do graphic design and editing is almost a necessity in the modern workforce. So I did obviously face a couple challenges with this big of a project. First of all was material overload. With 197 shots and 20 cast members, I just wouldn't have the time to do this. Scheduling was a big issue, so I would have to cut a lot back. By the time I had cut everything off that I needed to, I had 80 shots listed on only 4 cast members, which are the 4 members of my band. I also had to record a backing track. I thought this would only take 2 weeks, and it actually ended up taking about a month and a half because I would be using the Bear Media Podcast Studio for recording. And it was very nice of them because I got to use it for free instead of going to an actual studio, which costs thousands of dollars. So in the end, I was only able to use it for about an hour and a half each session, and I would only have about a day or 1 day every week. So it ended up taking a lot longer than I was hoping it to, delaying the shooting of the video because I had to have that video or the backing track done to begin filming the music video. Scheduling was also a very big issue. 2 of us are in extracurricular activities, 2 of my bandmates, and the other 2 had jobs. So I had to find a day that we all didn't have at least one thing going on because all 4 of us obviously had to be there to film the video. So we found that a Wednesday in January one day in January was going to have to be enough to film this music video. We also were nice enough to have Star Theater give us their facilities for 2 hours for free. And then finally, transportation. I had to get a drum set from the high school and my bandmates' equipment from the studio, our own studio, and get it to the Star Theater. I had to borrow my dad's carpet van for flooring installation, and that doesn't sound like it would be a big deal, but the van breaks down every time we stop, and we had a very large Headspace sticker, which is our band name sticker, plastered on the side of the van, so it ended up just being a very embarrassing experience for all of the band. So the final product did end up turning a lot better than I thought it would. After cutting all those scenes out, the material of the music video did end up being really good. I still had all those shots that I liked, and we looked very cool on stage performing as one band. The lighting in the video was also great. The Star Theater was nice enough to also give us a sound and lighting guy for the 2 hours. So he was able to get our band's kind of theme colors up onto the stage. So that was very cool to see. And the overall vibe of the music video is really good. So we only had the 2 hours in the actual Star Theater. And even when we got to the time crunch at the end, when we had to get those last couple scenes cranked out, we never were really stressed out. We just were up there as a band, performing for the first time together, having a good time. And then finally, the filming. I had to tell Mrs. Lee, like I said, kind of what I was looking for. Miss Lee knew exactly what to do. She was able to put the cameras in the right spots. And so it made my job very easy being a director and also editing the video together. So all in all, I was able to take my two favorite things, which is music and film, and combine them into one very fun project. So thank you for your guys' time. Do you have any questions? Okay. So the beginning of this year, yeah, it was an original song. It was an original piece. The beginning of this year was very stressful. I was, settling into my senior year, and so obviously I had to, adjust to that. I was about to be done with school. We are about to be done with school, and also my friends. I had to kind of adjust to my friend group at the time.
So your storyboard setup, how did you go about setting that up?
I used a Google spreadsheet, so I kind of knew what the basic idea was going to be. My original intent was to kind of have like this kid that is overlooked. He goes throughout his high school day. He thinks people are waving at him, and he goes to say hi to them, but they just walk past him. So I ended up, creating a shot list, creating a storyboard, and a Google spreadsheet. Yeah, I had times like after I had got the backing track done, I had time slots for like the specific time that these things would be happening. My favorite music decade. I really like the 90s. Punk rock is my favorite genre. And if you heard the song itself, it is very punk rock driven.
Favorite music video?
My favorite music video? I really like the music video for Basket Case by Green Day because it kind of combines the story element and also the performance music video element. And the two combined is a really cool music video. Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions?
You talk about controversial pieces. Was there something in your music video that was controversial?
So no, in the original music video, obviously I was going to like kind of talk about, it's not really controversial, but I was going to just talk about the kid being overlooked and that kind of thing. But for the research itself, I obviously wanted this to be my end product, and I had to find a way to connect this and make an actual product out of it. And I thought that I might as well talk about censoring the artwork. So in the actual music video, there is nothing censored or there's nothing controversial about it. It's just a performance music video of our band. Anything else? Thank you.
wheel this
I
time.
know, third time's a charm. Might as well. Done. Am I good to go? All right. Are my judges ready? In 1997, Tiger Woods watched his 12-foot birdie putt sink into the cup on Augusta National's 14th green. As a rookie, Tiger Woods was 12 strokes ahead of all his other opponents and was able to hold this lead until the very end of the round to seal his win for the 1997 Masters tournament. Hello, I'm Alex Moritz, and I believe golf is one of the best sports to improve social, physical, and mental capabilities. First, I'd like to start off by giving a little background on my golf history. So I was raised to be a basketball player. From kindergarten to my freshman year of high school, basketball is the only sport I ever did. My freshman year, I decided to run track, and I didn't really enjoy it because I'm not a fast runner, and I got last place on just about every single race. I did get second place on a race, but there was only 2 people in that race, so it didn't really count. And then my mentor, my sophomore year, influenced me to play golf. My mentor, Coach Johnson, really great guy, influenced me to play golf so that way I could introduce to a new sport, and I absolutely fell in love with golf. I was at the golf course every day from dawn till dusk for the next 2 summers, working and trying to get better to join the varsity team, and it's made a great job because we've done really well this year. But my background is short compared to golf's history. Golf dates back all the way back to the ancient Roman times, in which Romans would use a certain shaped stick to knock around a leather ball that was often filled with feathers. This game was known as Paganica. Later, in the late 1700s, later adaptations of the game came from the French, Dutch, and the English, but the first ever written document isn't found until in Scotland in 1457, in which that is an Act of Parliament of 1457. The government was attempting to ban the sport due to its increasing popularity. It was taken away from the people's time of the militaristic medieval chores of that time period. Ironically enough, King James IV and V of Scotland were both consistent golfers and played just about every day. Later, in 1894, golf finally hit the States and the USGA was founded. And 102 years later, the golf prodigy Tiger Woods joined the PGA Tour. Tiger Woods made golf a way more diverse audience. He brought around more endorsements, sponsorships, and viewerships. And most importantly, he took away from the stereotype that golf was just an old man sport. Tiger Woods allowed pros today to realize that a fit golfer makes a better golfer. Tiger Woods revolutionized the game of golf to make it more of a fitness perspective sport rather than just a Sunday game sport. He allowed pros to realize, like I said, that fit golfer is a better golfer, and that less physically active people can just simply swing the golf club, can bring greater arm strength and torso flexibility all around. Golf also offers one of the most overlooked exercises, which is walking. The average golfer for a round of 18 holes walks about 4 to 5 miles. You add a 20 to 30 pound golf bag, you're burning a lot of calories, you're helping to lower blood pressure, help the heart work a lot better, and overall improve the cardiovascular system in general. Walking also increases muscle tone. Muscle tone all over the body. Walking about that 3 times a week, about 4 to 5 miles 3 times a week, can improve muscle tone all over the body. Not only in the legs, but even Coach Johnson says when golf season rolls around, he can notice a great difference in his calves because he's toning up a lot more due to us walking that 3 times a week, 4 to 5 miles. And besides the physical benefits of golf, there are a lot of mental upsides as well. Golf can be a great stress relieving game. If someone has a hard day at work, they want to wind down and relax and go spend some time outside, golf is a sport for that. It's also a great focus game, in which someone has their priorities messed around, jumbled up. They can go out to the golf course and focus on hitting a golf ball for a few hours. It really takes away from the stress in your life and it helps you to focus just on one simple thing. Now, with so many benefits, why don't more people play golf? Well, there can be a couple of fear factors. For one, golf is a very, very expensive sport. A decent driver can cost up to $600. Woods and hybrids can be up to $250 or $250 a club. A set of 7 to 9 different irons can cost anywhere from $700 to $1,200. And a putter can be for a thrift store putter for $40 or handcrafted for $400. The alternative to this is a starter set. Starter sets include all the clubs I just mentioned, plus a bag for $400 or less. Starter sets are great for beginners, and every beginner should start with one. I myself, as a beginner, started with the starter set. and I turned out really well because I had to later on upgrade to better clubs that would improve and match my game. The next fear factor is socials. Golf can be a very socially intimidating game. No one wants to go to the country club and be judged by the older gentlemen that take the game a little bit too seriously. And no one wants to be fun of by their friends that when you're playing with them, you just simply want to get better while you're at the golf course, and no one wants to be fun of by their friends. So I decided to make the alternative to this, in which I made my product. I hosted free golf lessons for the month of October and November to beginners or intermediate players of all ages. This picture you see here is the actual advertisement I used to publicize my product, in which I shared it through friends and family on Facebook, and I also put a flyer of it here in the comments at the high school. The plan was to make an affordable and socially safe space for beginners and intermediate players alike. By affordable, I mean I made them free. Golf coaches today can charge anywhere from $70 or more an hour, and no one just has that money lying around if you want to get a lesson 3 times a week. By socially safe, I mean I wanted to give a place for beginners to feel confident and not embarrassed when they're wanting to hit a golf ball and swing a club well. One of the people I gave lessons to, Cindy, says I was really patient with her when giving her her lesson, and that allowed her to play confidently for future rounds as well. The results turned out decently well. I wanted to give a minimum of 10 lessons through the 2 months of this time span I gave my lessons, so 5 per month. I came up short and only gave 7. Although I came to the realization that it's not about how many people I give the lessons to, it's about who signs up, and that's truly what matters. As a give back system to the people who did sign up, I decided to put their names into a drawing to win a chance to win a box of Titleist Pro V1 golf balls, which is one of the best balls on the market. The winner of this, as you can see in the last slide, was Dirk, and this is Dirk. He was a super, super nice guy. He really appreciated how I would transfer knowledge that I learned from my coach and give it to him, and how I didn't start with simple, poor mistakes most often beginners do. Challenges. So the first challenge I had to face when giving these lessons was the Missouri weather. If you're from Missouri or you've been here for a while, you know Missouri weather can be extremely, extremely unpredictable. One day I'd have a lesson planned. It'd be a nice 60 degrees outside, sunny, windy, not windy, and it's just a perfect day for golf. I'd wake up the day of and it'd be 35 degrees outside, chilly, almost about to storm like you can see in this picture, and I had to reschedule a lot of lessons because of that. But I got around it and got them all fixed out. Next problem was these social interactions. My one-on-one interaction skills with complete strangers are not my forte. So I knew coming into these lessons that I had to upgrade those skills, because golf, especially when coaching it, is a one-on-one sport. So I knew coming into these lessons, like I said, I had to make some changes. By the first or second lessons, I wasn't very good at it. I was kind of just a one-word answer at the response, but I got warmed up to those strangers and became honestly friends with them. The last challenge was teaching the information. As a more experienced player, I understand more in-depth terminology. So when speaking to these beginners I was giving lessons to, I would often say something that I understood as a more experienced player, and they would look at me with a confused look on their face. And so about 3 lessons in, I realized that that was my problem when coming into these beginning lessons. And I had to reach back to my roots as a beginner myself and look back at how my coach taught me and transfer that knowledge to the beginners I gave lessons to. Tiger Woods in 1997 proved to the world that golf was more than just the stereotypical old man sport. He proved to the world that it had many, many mental, physical, and social factors to come along with it. Everyone should at least give golf one try in their life. It's a great sport and it's a lifetime sport. Thank you. Do my judges have any questions? Any age, but like the youngest I gave was my age, a year younger than me, and then the oldest was the gentleman who won. He was probably in his 70s or so, and he was a more experienced player, but he just wanted to get some tips from a younger player. Thank you.